All right, let's dive into a piece of wisdom that sounds completely backwards at first, but is, when you really think about it, deeply and psychologically true. It's all about the people we surround ourselves with, and why sometimes the biggest threat to you isn't your sworn enemy, but the person who says they've got your back. And there it is. This is an ancient proverb. You can find it in cultures all over the world. And it's a pretty stark warning about where we place our trust. We live in a world that's obsessed with having allies and being on a team. But this idea, this forces you to press pause. We're going to unpack exactly why, from a psychological view. This isn't just some clever old saying. It's basically a survival guide. So here's the big question, right? How can someone with good intentions, but just terrible judgment, actually cause more damage than someone who is actively hostile toward you? Well, the answer is buried in the basics of human psychology, in things like predictability, cognitive biases, and just plain old competence. Okay, let's start with the most obvious threat here, the well-meaning but ultimately destructive foolish friend. And to be clear, we're not talking about someone who makes an occasional mistake. We all do that. This is about a consistent pattern of behavior that can quietly and completely sabotage your life. Let's get a little clinical for a second. We aren't just talking about someone who's a bit clueless. Psychologically, a foolish friend is someone who consistently acts without thinking things through. You know the type. They might leak a secret, not because they're malicious, but because they literally can't grasp the consequences. Their impulsivity just steamrolls their loyalty. And that is what makes them so incredibly dangerous. See, you can't reason with incompetence. You can't debate it. A person with malice has a goal, a strategy. You can at least try to figure them out. But an incompetent person, they're just a chaotic force. The damage they cause is an accident, a byproduct of their bad judgment. But for you, the result is exactly the same, real and sometimes irreversible harm. And you see this pattern play out on the biggest stages in history. I mean, just look at Julius Caesar. The guy was a brilliant strategist. He could handle smart enemies like Pompey, no problem. But what brought him down? His supposed friends. He trusted his allies in the Senate, but they were stuck in this psychological death spiral we call groupthink, just reinforcing each other's terrible ideas without an ounce of critical thought. The result? They killed him with absolutely no plan for what to do next and plunged Rome into a horrifying civil war. And even if you're not an emperor, these relationships take a huge personal toll. Constantly having to clean up after someone else's bad decisions is exhausting. It literally triggers your body's stress response. We're talking cortisol spikes. You end up stuck in this cycle of frustration and anxiety. And the worst part is, because they don't mean any harm, you feel guilty for being resentful. So they become these accidental manipulators, using your friendship to get you to fix the messes they keep making. So, we've seen the kind of chaos a foolish friend can unleash. But what about the other half of this proverb? It feels really weird to say this, but let's actually explore how a wise enemy can be, an asset. See, unlike the foolish friend, a wise enemy is predictable. Their opposition isn't just random noise, it's strategic. They aren't trying to cause chaos just for fun. They have a clear goal. And that clarity, that's something you can work with. Or at the very least, you can work against it. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, this just makes total sense. We don't get better when things are comfortable and easy. We grow when we're forced to overcome a challenge. A smart opponent makes you sharpen your thinking, anticipate their moves, and become more resilient. It's kind of like a chess match, right? You only get better by playing against someone who's good enough to beat you. I mean, the contrast here could not be more stark. On one side, you've got the foolish friend, this chaotic, unpredictable force that weakens you through constant stress and damage control. And on the other, you have the wise enemy, a logical, predictable challenge that actually forces you to get stronger. One drains you, the other makes you better. A wise enemy usually operates on logic, not on a whim. Think of it as Machiavellian, not necessarily evil, but pragmatic. Their actions are designed to benefit them. And that very self-interest is what makes them so predictable. You can analyze their motives, you can anticipate their strategy, you can even negotiate with them because their decisions are based on a cold, hard cost-benefit analysis, not some random emotional outburst. And this is the psychological trap of the foolish friend. They are often perfect examples of the Dunning-Kruger effect. That's the cognitive bias where people with very low ability in something wildly overestimate how good they are at it. So they genuinely, truly believe they are helping. They don't know what they don't know, and that profound ignorance is exactly what makes them so dangerous. So, after all that, the logical next step is to turn this whole idea inward. How do we take this wisdom and actually apply it to our own lives to protect ourselves? So here are some real, practical, psychologically based red flags. Remember, we're not talking about a single mistake, we're looking for a consistent pattern. Are they always letting people down? Do they act first and think later, if at all? Look at their track record. Is it just a long line of bad decisions? Do they constantly misread social situations? This often ties back to a core personality trait called conscientiousness. If it's low, they're likely to be disorganized and careless. These aren't character flaws for you to fix. They are warning signs for you to pay attention to. Think about it like this. A tribe can build a huge wall to defend against an enemy on the outside. That's straightforward. But a fool inside the walls, someone who accidentally leaves the gate open or poisons the well, that person can destroy the entire group from within. Their danger comes from their proximity and from the trust you've given them. So we're left with this question to ask ourselves. And look, this is not about cutting off every person in your life who isn't perfect. It's about being honest, really honest, about the roles people actually play. A wise enemy keeps you sharp. A foolish friend, no matter how much they care about you, can drag you straight into chaos. So the question is, who in your circle is elevating you, and who is quietly endangering you? Choose wisely.